All right, Matt, what are we playing this week?
This week, Nate, we're playing Final Fantasy II, released in 1991 by Squaresoft.
Oh man, what a title!
What a title. So, Nate, can you tell us why we are playing this game this week?
This game has a special place in both of our hearts, harkens back to childhood, and more importantly, it's one of those games that you kind of kept playing it since it. I mean, not since release. Yeah, I was one, you were two, so that's not really possible. But as soon as we could, our step pop, Mike, he was a gamer, and we kind of just stumbled on it. And next thing you know, uh, it's a Final Fantasy, not just two, but as a series. We're huge fans of, and lo and behold, you've developed RPGs as well. So it's one of those cornerstones of gaming that like where did it all start? I guess Final Fantasy two, and now we're playing it because man, it's quarantine, and why the hell not?
I agree. Uh, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but I think up until this point, when we've discovered Final Fantasy II, we'd been quite casual. We had a Nintendo. We even had a Super Nintendo. No, I guess we got that later. We discovered this going to visit mom, and I think it was the first game that just really spoke to us. It had more depth to it than anything we played up till then. We played Zelda on Nintendo, and Zelda is, I mean, it's a bare bones game. It wasn't meant to be a sprawling narrative in your face. It was meant to be something stumbled upon. Zelda was an act of discovery. Final Fantasy II was an act of narrative. Um, and so I think that's why we were the right age at the right time to play this, because we understood that narrative. And maybe perhaps not all of it. And I think as we play through this, we'll discover things that we didn't the first time around when we were less than 10 years old.
Like the child kidnapping.
Stuff like that, exactly. So, and you're right, it has remained that cornerstone. We went on to play subsequent Final Fantasies to branch out into other RPGs by Square or by other companies. You played
Hmm.
Secret of Mana. Um, I got into other tabletop RPGs, and like you said, now that I have the technical skills, been able to develop my own RPGs with software. So this has a special place in our hearts, and I think it makes perfect sense to be the first game we do together on Give Me the Controller.
Hey, nice. That was good copy. Are you reading a script?
I am actually, yeah, I have it typed out here. No, I
well,
don't. That's silly.
I'm curious. Before we get into the intro and playing and talk about the plot and programming and design of such of IP, uh, could you maybe talk about RPG making design? Not necessarily, unpack it a lot, but your experience with it. You're much more versed, and when it comes to these on the technical side, you sound really smart. So I'm curious, what was Holding the Hero, right? That was your first title.
Yeah, so I got into RPG making. I mean, because I like the idea of games as narrative, and I think of it as a series of tiers. There's of media on a spectrum of interactive, most interactive to least interactive. Games, I feel, have the ability to be one step below being the actor. I suppose if you were in a stage production or a movie, that's the ultimate form of interaction. You're actually wielding the sword. You're actually delivering the lines. You're actually being impacted by others. A step below that is when I do that via an avatar
Hmm.
in a game that I control and that I set the pace of. A step below that, I would look at the written word. You still control the pace in that you you advance as fast as you like. You can scale back and reread something, so you control time, sort of in a way that perhaps actually other mediums don't allow so much. Um, but it's being presented to you often as a passive observer, and perhaps better people can get into the head of the space better. Um, but I feel it's for me personally, it's not as interactive as the video game. You have less agency. And I'd even go then, below that or towards the least interactive end of that, I would look at visual medium such as observing movies, observing TV shows. Your agency exists solely in your ability to fast forward, rewind, pause, etc. But it's shown to you, not in the way that books are told to you. So you do the showing in your head, right? You have to have creative agency in a book. In a show, I feel that's all stripped down, and that's not to demean shows and to present one as better than the other. But for me, I like the idea of the person playing a role in the narrative, and short of me, giving a camera to everyone to film their own movies, this is a way that I can craft a narrative that a player can move through or have efficacy in making choices in, which we've seen a lot more in later RPGs. That's something we'll be interested in watching in Final Fantasy and playing Final Fantasy, is looking at instances where there's character agency, where you impact the story, and areas where you don't. From my understanding, from my memory of this game, there wasn't a lot of agency. We didn't have the open sandbox that you'd see in greater games now, and even saw in 1997 with, Final Fantasy VII, where you could roll around the world, go back to a place or not. This is Final Fantasy 2, quite linear, and segueing into my RPG making, there's good reason for that, because it allows you to direct the player for a certain experience. You play a game like Skyrim, and the first thing I do is I say, to heck with you, main storyline, there's a whole world to explore. And I read an article a long time ago that said that pattern of behavior was sort of a reaction to these Final Fantasy games, wherein you had nothing to do but follow the main storyline. So Hold the Hero was a game I designed over many laborious hours for a friend's kid's birthday. I just thought it'd be interesting to him, and his dad's a gamer, so he, the child grew up with games as a medium for narrative exploration, and for the other reasons that you would read a book. You could play games for the similar reason. I enjoyed the experience so much, and wanted to give myself more freedom to do something beyond just, a gift to a friend's child, that I made a sequel for it and put that one on itch. So you can find Holding the Hero 2, Temple of the Elements, on itch. It's not great. It's again more of a labor of love. But someone enjoyed it enough they donated $1 to me. So if I can bring you 10 hours of joy, give Holding the Hero 2 a chance. It is certainly a trapping of its medium. It has the standard assets. I've tried to play a bit more with the technology. I'm not a coder, so I didn't really go into the Ruby aspect of it. But there's a lot you can do with creating events triggered by the player in certain ways that make the game more fun. So it isn't a Final Fantasy in the sense that it's not linear, as linear as Final Fantasy. Certainly there is a standard path to go through, but you're sort of presented with an open world to explore as you will at your own pace, with side quests to keep you busy and flesh out the characters a little bit. So kudos to you if you can spot me and Nate in the game, because we make an appearance.
That should be a shirt.
Kudos to you.
No, not the kudos. The you and me existing in property.
I call it RPG Pub.
Oh, that's cool. Like Villain Pub.
Yeah, you got it.
Hey, shout out to Hizzy. Much love.
So, RPG Maker, of course, a pixelated. Fetish is actually a pretty good word for it, because we have technology to do more than that. Unreal 5, we can do more than this. But for a lot of people, for me, there's a certain nostalgia in the retro style, but a simplicity that frees the creator and I think the player to explore more than the visuals of the game, to take time to critically examine the mechanics. When you're not so dazzled by how flashy they are, you can maybe look at them and gauge their impact as part of the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Did you find it the the writing process, and if you did storyboarding, did you find it a little more? What was the most difficult and the most fun part of developing a game?
The most difficult part of developing a game is developing a game. No, I think the most difficult part for me was translating mechanics in my head through the software, because again, without attempting to do the coding component, I was constraining myself in how effective I'd be with giving the player the experience I wanted them to have. I ended up having to cut things, and there's a good phrase in creating and writing called "kill your darlings." So I look at a mechanic and I think I just can't make it work, or I make it work. It looks so cheesy with the assets I have, and the logical flow of it that it's just not going to be. So that's helpful too, because it helps you sharpen your scope to something more tangible and manageable. The writing part I quite enjoyed in and of itself. I like to write in my spare time. So the narrative itself came fairly easily. Another problem though is when I write, I write for a certain level of engagement. Writing for a video game, there are levels of engagement that I was never cognizant of. We're talking about balance, for instance. So if I write into a video game, and then there's going to be a boss fight on this mountain. That's fine, easy to write.
Yeah.
There's easy to write the words, but it's not easy to write, well, how difficult should this fight be? How many resources should it take for the player? How many times should a player expect to fail before they get it right? How easy should it be if we want to give the player an experience where they feel powerful? So there's other meta narrative aspects that I feel don't deliver at the same level. Certainly you can. You could use a high level of vocabulary if you want to slow a reader down. You can use shorter sentences if you want to speed the reader up. Okay, I can get my head around those things, but I'm trying to balance formulas. That's a level of thought I hadn't had much training at.
Mark Bernardin and Kevin Smith, their podcast Fat Man Beyond, Mark Bernardin talks about story engineering a lot on that show, and I really appreciate how a narrative can move in multiple directions while also the macro plot is, they're all adjacent and moving in a similar direction. Sure, there's different stories being told, but they're all being threaded, right? There's seeding and threading, and it's I can't even imagine what the writers of Final Fantasy VII, the remake, Toriyama and Toriyama rather. I can't imagine how long it took to rewrite one of the most successful properties ever in the history of gaming, and making it new and not repeating story beats, or maybe those beats are similar but you're throwing in new elements. And I don't want to get into spoilers because you haven't finished it yet, but the fact that you took on that task and you feel one way, but it may not be that way. That's neither here nor there. It's impressive that it's a testament to how disciplined and how hardworking of an individual you are. So kudos, man.
Well, thanks. Disciplined is a sort of a strong word to use. It took me hundreds of hours over 3 years to do, off and on, as I moved, as I got various jobs, as I got married. So, but it definitely stuck with me because it's something I wanted to see through to the end. And I think that's something that every game maker feels at a certain point is, I put a lot of time into it, and I don't want that time to be meaningless. I want to see it through to the end without sacrificing anything. And I hope that in the experience others may have playing Holding the Hero 2, they don't feel the game was sacrificed at a certain point. To be fair, it does not conclusively end. It's set up for a sequel, #spoiler alert, which I don't know will ever be made. Because I think I'd like to shift my focus to other IPs of my own. So creating ideas for me is never difficult. Following through on ideas, that's something a lot of us struggle with. And I'm glad to see that Final Fantasy II was followed through to the end.
Yeah, man. I remember when I beat Final Fantasy II for the first time. Now I beat it. Sure, it was great. But then I went back to play it and just get to level 100 because you mentioned obsession. Some could have said that a younger me was not just a little quirky and a little weird, but, you know, obsessive leaning, I guess. And my file was erased, and I lost it.
I remember that.
I was so furious.
Tough times.
Oh no! First world problem, stupid white kid. But I remember that, and I remember being so like a girl broke my heart again or something. And it's so fascinating that just a work that you love so much, a project, a book, a podcast, whatever the medium, and then it goes away and you lose your shit. Like, come on, oh no, you have to replay it. Looking back, I wish that my attitude would have been much more mature. But the passion of gaming, I suppose, that's a great example of an impassioned child inspired by what Squaresoft did, man. Final Fantasy II is a great fucking story. And we've done a few tests already, and I'm very excited to actually go through it because Cecil is a terrible person.
Well, this is something that I came across when I was studying writing, is that the stories that stick out most with me are the ones with character change. And we play so many games where we're the hero and we start off as a hero, and the only thing that really changes is our power level. What I recall from Final Fantasy II is you do start off as someone who has serious moral questions and a history they're not proud of, and over the course of the game confronts those. And I don't want to spoil Final Fantasy II for those who haven't seen it, but there is a good metamorphosis that happens. And to see it visually, musically, and even more narratively in the way that the character has powers in the video game, which I guess is more mechanically than narratively, but that also, you see that transformation, which again is something that is just a lot, I think, easier to have in video games. You can show transformations in so many ways. A book doesn't have a soundtrack. You have a soundtrack in your head, which can oftentimes be more powerful.
Right.
This having the game takes that burden away from you, but it also maybe cripples you. I won't go into that because I'm not, as musically inclined as some people. When we play these games, I'm looking more as a narrative, as visuals, as mechanics. But perhaps you would have the insight that I don't, that would be worth also exploring.
Well, actually, you know what? Per your point, I watched an episode of Cowboy Bebop last night, and Cowboy Bebop is also a manga. Now, Cowboy Bebop actually has its own amazing soundtrack, right? Now, what if you are listening to the soundtrack while reading the manga? You're influencing not just the narrative, but your experience, because you have companion media that you're applying to a different medium that sure that you can't press play on pages or on your device and the soundtrack will come out through the story, but you can design your own soundtrack. Whenever I read a book, physical, not audio book, and I have some music in or something to help assist keep me on track, that piece is now attached to that other thing forever. And that's a fun way to, maybe you'll never see Peter Frampton the same, because you're reading something about rock and roll at CBGB's or at the Rainbow in Los Angeles, or you're reading, historical nonfiction, so history, and you're listening to pieces from that time to immerse yourself further in the universe. And music, I'm really excited to get into that with you because Nobuo Uematsu has done all the soundtracks for all Final Fantasy games forever. and it's going to be so fun to dive as deep as we want into why the Final Fantasy series, the ones that are really good, why they're good. And Final Fantasy 3, technically 6, right? That soundtrack, I think, was the first game soundtrack that I actually sought out to have in my catalog.
Yeah, me as well. The Terrace theme, the Overworld, that one.
Oh my god!
I actually had the good fortune to be able to see Final Fantasy in concert, and when they hit that one, even my wife, who has never played a Final Fantasy, thought it was amazing. And we played the game a bit together, and she, certainly enjoyed the parts of the Overworld for that theme alone. I don't know how many nights, in my preteen years, I fell asleep with that on my CD, man, playing. I will say that I think there is a certain point in Final Fantasy 2 where the music did stand out for me more than others.
Really?
And we'll get to that in the game. You'll certainly remember it when we're there, and you'll have to remind me. But if I just say now, remember the twins, I think you'll know what I'm thinking of.
Fuck.
So,
you know what?
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna check out Nobuo Uematsu's catalog. He's I believe it's called Elseworlds, the records.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go check those out and listen to Final Fantasy 2 soundtrack. So homework, right? So we can do this better. But man, I'm fucking excited.
Okay, we're live. Okay, Nate. So before we jump into playing, what are your thoughts on what the play experience is going to be like based on title screen? Title screens are the first things players see, and I think it sets the stage for the experience they're going to have. So, and I guess to be fair in the Final Fantasy sense, not just what do you see, what do you hear, and how does that impact your expectations for the game?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I was trying to think how to answer, and I realized now that it's just gaming it's sensory, right? The only sense that you're missing out on is smell,
Taste.
and that's the only right. Taste and smell are the only senses that aren't engaged. So those are the ones that influence you. Now, if you're not deaf, and there's plenty of there is deaf gaming communities. If you're playing on mute, you're missing out on one of the most important components of this particular of Final Fantasy 2, because we all know that when you hear this song playing, we all know what it is. It is iconic, and everybody that is worth their salt as a piano player and is a nerd knows how to play this song. I remember, growing up, Stan and Swan rather. Whoops. Stan and Swan.
Had a friend.
had an individual who was learning a lot of nerdy titles, and just seeing him play it, from just being influenced enough to recover a track from a game alone. Not that gaming isn't one of the most beautiful of industries and most amazing of achievements, in my opinion, but seeing what music can influence and do alone as a musician is one of the reasons why I fell in love with the Final Fantasy series.
Sure.
And from the title card, reading that it's from the 90s, I was really young, so it grabs those nostalgic elements, and the color of the lettering, and how dope of a sword that looks, but it's not functional at all. It's clear that it feels like Mjolnir. That you have to be an individual that is not chaotic evil or even neutral evil, but of a pure heart, and maybe has, possibly a Jedi, someone like that.
That's a good. I don't want to say an analysis of that sort. I think, for me, it didn't readily resonate that the sword itself appears to be specifically designed for an individual. And looking at it now, it's like, oh, of course it does. I mean, that is not a sword that just anyone has, right? That is a sword that is made for someone, or that someone is made for that sword.
Well, you have the controller in your hands when whenever I'm doing a replay of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas because that narrative is fucking good. Samuel L. Jackson took the project for a reason, right? When you have the control in your hands, especially with the, and you're on the title and the anticipation of, start, select, or any button, the when you're first about to play something, I always forget that. Oh, right, I really love this. I really love doing this. It's not just a hobby, and people that do playthroughs that don't have commentary. You were making a point about shows and movies. Well, people can literally watch either cutscenes or gameplay of games, in their entirety, and be able to. Sure, it's not near as the same because you're taking you're giving the controller away. That I suppose that's a new element of enjoying gaming. But when I first Horizon Zero Dawn, I watched that and I did not need to play. I want to, but man, just a professional gamer that is that good that can make a battle that might not go well seem really fluid and calculated and measured, much like what you're going to be doing. When we're doing the fights in here, it really adds to the narrative, and you don't always need a controller if the controller's in the right hands.
Okay, I'm gonna have to push back against that myself, and maybe that's why I don't enjoy watching playthroughs, because for me, the mechanics, the physical movement controlling should be part of the narrative and experience. And yes, you can watch it, and you can certainly get something out of watching those. I don't get as much out of that. I want to be the one, like I need to feel, yes, when I move, I am literally moving the narrative along.
Indeed.
So, going back to our title card here, as you called it, this music in particular, like you said, is iconic, and it's sort of in a way uplifting.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because that plays against this black background we have.
Yeah.
And it gets even worse in the next Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy 3, because you see
so bleak.
There's dark clouds and there's lightning, but it just goes to show you that this is not a game necessarily entirely positive. The music, I think, carries us along because, okay, there is something mystical about it, perhaps something positive about it, but when you're looking at the title card here, you see the letters are, archaic looking, they're stylized. Mm-hmm. There's a black background, there's a sword piercing through it, so you obviously get a sense of the medieval.
Yeah.
And of course the word fantasy, so you get a sense of probably the fanciful here as well. We don't know to what degree. Are there going to be elves and ogres and dragons? Well, I guess actually, spoiler alert, there is in this game.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more than dragons.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot more than that. So the sword itself, though, too, quite stylized. It's not just a practical sword made by a blacksmith, any old blacksmith. It appears itself to have magical qualities about it, which goes to a huge part of the Final Fantasy series. Magic is present in some form everywhere, and that goes back to fantasy as well. So.
Well, you know what I just noticed, and I'm sure Final Fantasy VII was. I don't know when they started writing it, but on the hilt of the sword, it looks a lot like materia. So you're also seeing Easter eggs for futures of franchises in the Final Fantasy series.
That is an excellent observation. Obviously we can't speak to the veracity of it, but that does connect to the point of this something magical. Materia itself is magic. It's condensed life force that allows you to do extraordinary things. And here in the Final Fantasy 2 system, there's no materia present, but there's certainly magic, and that may be a connection. You're right, it may be a connection that, yes, this represents these spheres of magic are something that perhaps are present in other Final Fantasy games as well.
Well, 97 is when Final Fantasy 7 was released, and this was released in 88, so that was a 9-year turnaround. And I imagine it took at least 3 years to design the game. So probably about a year to write, maybe longer. So there were probably implementations and strategies and design and renderings already in development for not just 7, but the sprawling universe, you know, and what started it all was Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and much like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they realized, oh, wait. We can do this? We can do this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's just do it.
For the audience, Nate, can you explain to us why Final Fantasy 2 says 1991 on it, but you referred to a 1988 release date?
That's a good point. Initial release date and December 17th, 1988. I would imagine it must have been a release for Super Nintendo. There may have been different consoles and platforms originally, but this also might be for the English edition, not Japanese, because it's a JRPG.
So, Nate, do you want to explain to the audience why we're playing Final Fantasy 2, which was released in 1991, when you referenced it being released originally in 1988?
Right, yes. Well, fun fact, JRPGs are commonly released in Japan first. And we're just going to go ahead and do a dive. I have some information pulled up on here. Final Fantasy 1 was released in 87, and Final Fantasy 2 was released in 88, right? So these, and Final Fantasy 4 was released on Super Nintendo. Now, Final Fantasy 2, the initial 88 release, it was released on a console known as Famicom, not found in America. So that's why these titles were reproduced, because then there was platforms readily available. So Super Nintendo and Game Boy allowed for reskins, updates, and maybe changes to the story. Because when Final Fantasy Legend 1 was released on Game Boy in 1989, and then we had Final Fantasy 3 released in 1990 on Famicom, which was also Final Fantasy 6 released for Super Nintendo. So Squaresoft, there's been Stadia is a great fucking example of a console not working out and studios needing to re-release titles elsewhere. So there's politics involved, and there's, just engineering that may have been fabrication of parts may have been too expensive, or these plants were closing. The 80s and 90s were pretty tumultuous times for a lot of people. And what's interesting with how Squaresoft pivoted, due to them making the adjustments to be on to have titles on Super Nintendo. Same with Mystic Quest, Final Fantasy V, released in 1992. It was such an easy move to go over to PlayStation from there, because and Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, and Squaresoft were Sony loyalists and have been for a long time because of controlling interests from Sony. I'm not an engineer of consoles or anything. Of maybe audio and video, maybe. But
you got me set up, okay? So that's some skills. But what you're saying is that 2 was not 2 initially.
No. 2 was, according to thefinalfantasy.com, essentially ran by people that have far too much time on their hands for this series. Not that it's a bad thing. It was released on a different console, and then 2 was it got updates and it got rewritten. The narrative was rewritten. So some say it's not a sequel, but some say that there were elements that you kind of got resolved in because there were a lot of plot holes and just poor writing here and there. and it's been I think after Final Fantasy VI they stopped doing that. Is that correct?
Can you rephrase the question for me?
After 3, which is also Final Fantasy VI, they stopped doing that, right?
Doing what?
Reissuing titles with a different name.
As far as I know. Yeah.
Because from 7 on, you know, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy 7 is a franchise, sure. You know, they have a series in that universe, but they don't really. Thank God they don't do that confusing stuff anymore.
Well, I guess like you said, the 80s and 90s, crazy times, especially in maybe the video game industry, so much happening and going away that since the PlayStation came out, since Nintendo 64 came out, the market has, perhaps until recently, somewhat stabilized. You had your big 3, then you had your big 2, then you had your big 3, so you had your PlayStation 64 devices, Nintendo and PlayStation, and Sega. Then you lost Sega out, but then you got the Xbox, and that was a stable situation. This, as far as consoles go, that was a stable situation for a long time until, now I jumped off consoles and got on Steam. And so now you're seeing more market players. So you have Stadia, like you said, and then you're going to have Amazon's game service, and I wouldn't even doubt if Disney puts out a game service somehow. I don't know. So
I would.
I mean, you do everything else. So that may change some things, but I think Square Enix, whomever, has also stabilized. They know what they're doing more. So yeah, I don't see them ever having to release one on one console under one name, a different console under a different name, and they barely even release them under different consoles anyway. So, to forget the mobile phone market. That's another game industry area. So Google has Android and iOS.
Square Enix is all over mobile gaming. They've released so many Final Fantasy title mini games through Google Play and every other platform. I forget about mobile gaming because I don't game mobilely. Not that it's bad. It generates a lot of jobs and a lot of people get paid and fed because of it.
Yeah.
But it's such a, I don't know. It's not my focus.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way.
Well, we don't have time for everything. I have Minesweeper on my phone. Browsing the internet is my game on my phone.
Yeah, reading news is really important, and listening to podcasts. And unfortunately, if like Star Talk, it can get kind of, I don't want to say boring, but I can be easily distracted, working out or whatever, or writing or whatever, and I'll miss something and I'll have to go back and listen to it. And, I don't like having to have my information get boring, and only boring people get bored, but, fun, energy is a great information delivery system.
Yes, it's true. So, with that, let's jump into our fun and energy. Let's play Final Fantasy II.
Fuck yeah, dude. I'm really excited. I didn't think I'd ever say that about this game.
All right.
All right. Hey, nice timing.
Here we go.
I'm excited.
There's the Red Wings theme.
There's that soundtrack we were talking about.
So airships, super prevalent in Final Fantasies, and probably what started my passion for airships in the first place.
Yeah, man, it's cool tech. You see in history people developed airship type things like gyrocopters.
So this is probably some sort of parallax background. No, it might be moving, so maybe not. But parallax background in gaming is when you just have a distant sort of layer behind your front assets. And it doesn't really change
cool.
Depending on your position. So it's just, you see it cycling through, and yeah, you can do that with the parallax. So here's our protagonist.
Our protagonist, Cecil.
Cecil? We said Cecil. We'll keep it at Cecil.
We've always said that, but people like Cecil B. DeMille.
Oh, yeah.
And you're hearing his music, and the writers were Hironobu Sakaguchi, and Kenji Terada. They wrote this narrative. So they're clearly a team.
We want to give credit to them. We also have to credit to localization for translating this for us as kids and allowing us to experience it now.
Is that who translated it?
Localization is just a term for translating things to
a
region's language. So we get the sense here that they're robbing people, that they don't want to do it. They're talking to amongst themselves.
Right.
So clearly this is something maybe new going on, or they're new to it.
Much like the Empire, and in Star Wars, had a lot of parallels.
I think this actually was the inspiration for Star Wars.
Well, let's see. 88 was the release, and they probably wrote it in 85, 86, maybe 84. And episode 5, Empire, right?
So much like we will refer to this game as Final Fantasy II throughout our play of it, we shall refer to the Star Wars as the original trilogy only.
Oh yeah. That's a damn good point. Yeah, so this has some Empire Strikes Back vibes.
All right, so Crystal of Water, so elemental. Oh, wizards.
Oh man. What kind of wizard? What wizard would you be? A black or a white one?
I mean, curing magic is very strong, but I think making lightning is even cooler. So probably a black mage.
Yeah.
Alright, so Cecil goes by force here. So, very rudimentary graphics going on here as far as the sprites themselves. They have a standard walking motion, a standard stepping motion, which is common throughout the Final Fantasies, and I think it influences me in my own game design. The stepping motion just shows someone who is acting, someone who's dynamic.
Is that what that's for? I've always wondered.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise they don't look that different from statues.
Oh shit. This is brutal, dude. It's just straight up murder.
Which happens off screen, they disappear, and that's...
I wonder if the studio said, no bodies. Can't do it.
Actually, I believe we'll learn later they weren't killed.
Really?
I believe we do, yeah.
What's this elders deal? I wish, much like Game of Thrones, you find out a little more about people, but in my opinion, they're Final Fantasy, Sakaguchi and Terada, the writers, they did some Game of Thrones level character development with Cecil.
Yeah, we'll see later on. I think that there's some evidence that supports that. So here's some exposition going on here. We learn King of Baron. He's eager about it. And our silent protagonist. Oh, a little cider, a little breath.
Reminds me of Pride and being members to the Red Wings. Looting is out of the question. Damn. Oh shit, they're defecting.
So
they've had it.
We see two things here. We see good versus evil, right? Looting on the side of evil. Not looting on the side of good. But then there's Cecil's position here, which is essential factor for prosperity. So he's more along the law of chaos. He's like, look, this is what the king demands, so we do it, regardless of the perceived morality situation.
That has some Cloud Strife vibes right there, dude.
That was, I think, something we noticed in a lot of Final Fantasies early on. You had a darker, brooding, morally challenged protagonist.
So broody.
but then you switch to Final Fantasy 9, where your main character is happy-go-lucky.
Right.
Then you have Titus in 10. Titus, again, we said Titus. We'll stick with Titus. Something that embodied much more of a jovial personality.
And even Lightning.
Exactly.
She is. Not only does she look like Cloud, but Man, they just kind of reskinned Cloud, but also made her really dynamic.
All right, so here we go. The first instance of combat.
Yes.
So what's a Final Fantasy without combat? What's a video game without? Yeah, it's interesting. What's a video game without this sort of?
Can you talk to us
threat?
about how this is designed in an RPG generator?
Sort of. So this wouldn't be that difficult at all. You have the parallax background, which I mentioned earlier.
Uh huh.
You have the airship, which is sort of a background asset, a level below the characters. I mean, you'll see a few times in this game, I think, where there are things that are perceived to be above the character, but they're actually not. And you'll see the character walk over them, like a door or something. So then, this is dialogue. This is what's called an event. So each crew member, the lines aren't attached to the crew member. There's just one event that triggers all the dialogue and triggers each crew member to turn to Cecil, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like, after Cecil said stop it, whatever, then the crew member was triggered to move up 4 spaces and turn. Then a dialogue was triggered, and so then after this, what's going to happen is a dialogue can be triggered too. So I didn't need any code for that sort of gameplay to happen. It's pretty easy to set up. So you do a graphic change, Cecil puts his hand up, dialogue, graphic change back, everyone moves. And then this was built into RPG Maker for me, so I didn't have to set up combat. And look, it's happening for me automatically here. So what's that mean? Why is Cecil,
non-playable?
Why is he non-playable at this point? Maybe 2 reasons. One, because players aren't expected to have any knowledge of combat. This just shows that combat happens, and that there are 2 sides, right? He's on one side, and he's on the other. Another maybe thing to show is that Cecil, this isn't the Cecil you want to play. This is Cecil who's unquestioning. This is Cecil who steals crystals, and maybe they think, you know what, we don't want the player to be in that space. I may be thinking too deeply about it, but.
Well, the implications, but art makes you emote, right? And he's really unlikable already.
But then you see this. Oh, he's caring for his crew. Are you okay? Watch out.
He's like Sephiroth, man. Don't mess with him.
Again, I can't do much here.
Nope.
You see, you get introduced to hit points. So that's something new here.
Right. I always raise my right hand and lightning comes from the sky.
Yeah, that's why when you were a kid, I tied your hand behind your back. Too many monsters, so you get the sense that, okay, this world is under attack. Not only are there the political threats, like you mentioned, like Game of Thrones, but there are these external threats, the monsters that have in this world. Why are there more of them now than before? Dun dun dun.
And that's where I think we get like in 7, weapons, the weapons that the planet produces. Maybe I think this is kind of in the same vein that the planet is trying. Space magic, sure, but the space magic is trying to save itself.
Yeah. What do you picture Cecil's voice to be like?
I was thinking someone that would make a great Cecil if you were to cast him as designed, because it looks like a white guy, and I think that was some studio meddling, because, unfortunately in the 90s that was a big thing, but Cecil can be anybody or anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tom Holland, of course, would make a great Cecil.
Okay. A little young for me. I get a sense here this is a Cecil who's been around. I don't know why. I just had Idris Elba in my mind.
Idris would be great.
Yeah. So, but at this point in particular, I'm thinking he's struggling off the combat. He's just like, make a landing. Something obviously you want something commanding, something deep.
Presence, stoic.
Yep.
You know what?
So as a player, I haven't been able to do much. I've been pressing the A button, but that has been my only interaction with the game so far. So again, easy way to just eases me into the mechanics of the game.
Driving it forward for you.
Exactly. So you'll see here, watch me walk over the door. Like there, he just clipped under him.
I like this soundtrack a lot, and this part, opening scene.
Oh, what's that one castle? Bagan?
Bacon?
No. Wait, he's Bagan. Figaro? I don't know. Some of these castles or towns has really clumsy that we liked as kids.
Yes, yes. Continue. Let's
Okay.
keep it
Well, you
going.
see Cecil here, talk about how the Mysidians were helpless. So he maintains one front in front of his crew, the dutiful servant, but to someone else, perhaps an equal or superior, he expresses more freely his reservations.
Yeah, right. And Bacon's clearly on the side of the Empire. That dude he drank the Kool-Aid forever ago, huh?
All right, so we're getting some visual cues here: treasure chests, walls. So this is done the 2D isometric style. You don't really ever see.
Remember that room?
Yeah.
Whoa. Please wait here in this room. Damn, that's some good writing right there, man.
It is a callback, isn't it? Or a call forward?
It's an Easter egg.
Foreshadowing.
Absolutely. Wow, this king, this guy is so evil. It's like in pitch meeting. Oh, what's his deal? Oh, he's evil.
Gotcha.
We should start doing pitch meetings after a game is done.
I agree. So there's something in narrative called save the cat. It's when you give the hero, you make the audience like the hero by having them save the cat, which is a metaphor. They do something we would all consider generally good that makes the character favorable. So up till now, we haven't had perhaps a favorable impression of Cecil or his duties because he stole a crystal, he looted a crystal, they were helpless, those things. But now we're being told he's rebellious, and so all he did was question it. And now we're seeing, okay, it's not Cecil, the king is evil, and Cecil's going against the king. That makes Cecil good. It's a bit, in this case, a little soft. I mean, we don't really, I don't know. In my opinion, we still don't find Cecil to be rebellious that much, nor overly
Not yet.
likable. Yeah.
Not yet.
We need
but
more exposition.
Yes.
My liege, okay, but medieval.
Oh no.
Again,
Shouldn't have done that.
had no efficacy in that. It made me hand over the crystal.
Yeah. You can go. No, thank you. No, nothing. Whoa. And he knows. Oh no. Here we go. Oh no.
We do not understand. Who's the we? Him and his crew? He's speaking for his crew?
Yeah, the we. That's a good point. The meaning of taking crystals. Oh shit.
Clipped my wings, did he?
Yeah, you got your wings clipped. You got fired. Cue the sad music.
Then we can hear summoned monsters. So they don't. In some games, you would see this would be like a certain text. Oh, some monsters. That's a clue for me. They do a lot less hand holding in these early games, partly because the convention they really couldn't. So I just have to remember. Oh, summoned monsters. Misty Valley. Okay, those might be important things later.
Super important things. Damn, exiled. And he can't get past them. Oh, there he is. Dragoon.
Someone sticking up for me. Concern. Okay, so we're told concern, and we're told her name. Hey. I'll show you my package.
Oh, no. Jason Statham would make a great Cecil. And he immediately apologizes to his buddy.
I wish put Steve Rogers in there. Get Chris Evans to do it.
Chris Evans? Yeah, sure. Perfect. He can do it.
Oh, so now we're breaking the narrative. We're getting explicit description of what to do.
Tutorial, yeah.
I mean, up till now, we've only been able to push the A button, so I feel like that really doesn't need to be said.
if you didn't know by now.
Well, I mean, also you think about the time you had the controller that two very distinct components. As you see on our backgrounds, you had the directional pad and the buttons. I mean, I really think you didn't need people to have be told that in a game. Like, it wasn't so difficult to figure out. But
so I'm doing a little digging, and Hironobu Sakaguchi is a video game designer, director, producer, writer, and film director.
Wow.
Best known as creator of the Final Fantasy series, having conceived the original concept for the first title, Final Fantasy, and also having directed several later entries in the franchise, and has had a long career in gaming with over 100 million units of video games sold worldwide. He left Square Enix and founded the studio Mistwalker in 2004.
I didn't know that. What does Mistwalker put out?
Let me check that right now.
We love for here. For Dragoon Kane and Cecil join forces, there'd be no match.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Master of the Dark Sword. So again, we're doing it because of loyalty. Perhaps a good sense that he didn't want to do darkness or dark things. Darkness to defend, so the ends justify the means.
But he says as commanded.
Right. They still didn't want to, and he only perhaps did it because, okay, I will do it, but only because I want to defend the people I care about.
Kit Harington could easily play Cecil. Anybody from Game of Thrones. Anybody. What's Robert Madden? Madden?
Robert Madden. Richard Madden.
Richard Madden. He'd be a great fucking Cecil. I think I just solved it. And Chris Hemsworth in there somewhere.
Cast, huh? Where's Keanu Reeves going?
I would say he could play the Eastern gentleman.
Okay, so a little visual clue here. So he tells me, take the treasure in this room. The switch is on the wall there. So I was like, oh, what's the switch? Okay, this is the one thing that looks different. Hey.
Now remember, there are secret pathways too that are outside of the
You're right. So that's
dress setting.
Again, through the convention, we can't see the players underneath this wall or through the wall. Cecil can, but he never alerts us to it. So that is something that, yes, that's a bit different. Maybe to wrap the mind around is you don't see exactly what Cecil sees, which means that you, in all essence, aren't Cecil entirely.
I'm looking at Mistwalker because we mentioned it, and the last title they released was Terra Battle 2 in 2017.
Oh, interesting.
Let's see, for Android and for iOS.
Whoa.
So you could say that since he left Square Enix, he's probably telling the stories that he's been wanting to tell on platforms where he's given not only teams but free reign.
Mm-hmm. So we're introduced to Rosa, a white mage, so another named character,
who turns out is your little your little girly friend. So, I think, and we actually get to see them have a romance that makes sense.
Here we go. So this, in our RPG Maker, there could be two ways to do this. One, if I'm X amount of spaces from the top of the screen, or you can actually put another layer the player doesn't see, but a region on the square I'm standing in, and if my region ID equals that region's ID, the event would start. So very easy to do. Oh, she doesn't look like I remember. That's a lot of pink.
Yeah, because who else would you like to see opposite Richard Madden as Rosa? Charlie Joe, bro.
How about a bunch of no-name actors? Let's give some upcoming people a chance.
I think so too, especially because if you were to redevelop Final Fantasy II into it'd be better for television, or small screen rather, because then you can tell a better story and just find a few good people, but rather not good, but a few famous people, and then make sure the supporting cast, is really, really good.
Okay, so here you go. The mages who didn't submit are confined here. So they weren't killed. Somehow they were able to be teleported.
Whoa. Man. They have teleportation tech? How did they design that?
or we didn't get to see them be captured. But why make them disappear at all? Just move them to the side, like they did with the Elder. Crystal's not just jewelry. So we're seeing the king wants the crystals badly. The Elder says there's something about them. And the wizards think, hey, you don't know about it. So the crystals more than meets the eye. We're being fed that, kind of spoon-fed at this point. Oh. All right, who plays Cid is the question.
Oh, Cid. Do you know who Trevor K. Smith is?
No.
He's he's a comedian, but also in a show Letterkenny, and that's my dream casting of Cid, is Trevor K. Smith.
Okay, let him know that. So again, we're seeing Cid here is also not wanting to make weapons, so we're getting the sense that this kingdom, Baron, hasn't been active, offensively, but is now.
Yeah,
recently.
Something influenced the king.
He's got a daughter. Oh, and now he's leaving me. Okay. The stairwell here. I guess I haven't tried any other buttons yet. Let's see. X gets my menu. Oh, there's the picture. He's got horns. Alright, so item, magic, equip, status, form. Oh, there's the button I want. I can't. I have a package. A cure and a 10. And I don't have any spells. I wear shadow armor. I'm right-handed.
What is shadow armor? Like, how do you... I imagine it's like shadow magic and you have to cast a spell while forging armor, which is dope, but I'd like to see that in real time.
Oh, okay. And here's where we get things faster, slower, and my window color. I'm going to leave it as they are. Okay, let's go upstairs. Ah. Well, thank you. So that is an event that's hard to plan for. So I had the ability to not talk to her. I could have talked to her from up here or down here.
Okay.
And it'd be interesting to see what they would have done with her movement if I had been in any other position. Because you see, from right here, she had to walk around me. Would she be able to walk straight if I talked to her from here? They may have planned for that contingency. They may also have realized that, 99% of players are just going to talk to her as soon as they enter this room. So we won't plan for any other contingencies. But you got to think about that.
Yeah, designing interactions is... Is
that a bottle of whiskey on my table? I never noticed that. There's a little glass next to it too.
Yeah, that's totally... I mean, would suggest that he might be drinking to distress.
A little depressed?
And yeah, probably definitely having PTSD.
There's only one chair here.
Suffering from mental health problems because he's probably had multiple concussions, from earlier in his career.
I can't believe I never noticed that. Yeah, I can. We were young when we played it.
Good details, man. That a lot of items that suggest, maybe all is not well.
Now, how about the symbolism of him sleeping in his armor? Just someone who's always guarded, someone who's always defensive about himself. He didn't appear to have that much trouble apologizing to Kain.
Let's see. And now his mind is racing.
Even if ordered. So now we do see rebellious streak. Okay.
He's done. He's already defected in his mind. Oh, there's a girly friend. So this is probably like the you're leaving tomorrow. Let's hook up, but we don't see them hook up. But that it suggests it.
Well, then here he goes being defensive again.
Oh, that's a metaphor.
Softy music here. Emoting what? A sense of gentility?
Yeah, nurturing, caring.
Yeah, it has a lullaby quality to it.
As someone, affection, like she would be singing to him.
Oh, so here's the thing: is she saying "oh dear" as in the sense of "oh my gosh, I can't believe it happened," or is it more of a "oh dear," as a term of endearment?
Maybe probably both. That her heart breaks for him because he's suffering.
Yes, and she's a white mage, and they may be prone to trying to help more cure
Empathy.
I'm just a dark knight. Obey my majesty.
Caught in a landslide. No escape from the Red Wings.
That's why we don't sing.
Open your eyes.
Now some tough love here.
Oof. So anything
Does she put on this show every time he goes on an expedition? Because it's not the first time.
Yeah, sure.
Going to a town is a lot safer than going on getting on board the Red Wings.
But I think what they're suggesting that when they go to those towns, people die.
I think you're right. Well, see, no hookup here.
Nope, no hookup.
Not be prudent.
Man, he's so broody.
Still, I am just a Dark Knight. I'm Batman. Cecil, the original Dark Knight. Actually, to be fair, Batman had it first.
You were merely born in the darkness.
Okay.
I was born in it.
Huh?
Molded by it.
I think there's an exploration I didn't do in the castle, which I think I may have lost the chance to do.
Possibly. Damn, so right away. City of Baron.
That's where we set up the trope. You go to a new town, you buy new gear, etc., etc.
Yep.
So adventure music, I like it. Call to action here. So the hero's journey begins. Not common in the Final Fantasy games, certainly, and new to us was the text crawl.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, it has some Star Wars vibes. Expelled.
Maybe a Morgan Freeman voiceover here.
Of the Red Wings, and he and Dragon King left Baron Volta village. In a valley enclosed in a deep fog.
That's Michael Caine. I said Morgan Freeman.
Michael Caine. Airships had been a dream, mastermind of many people. Yeah, the text crawl is unique. That's a good point.
I still think maybe in these early games they're trying to figure out what is a Final Fantasy. What
so they're
players have.
They're the Fire Nation, clearly.
Yes.
Seeking the crystals. Why do the monsters keep increasing?
Maybe the crystals keep the monsters away. Actually, that's the Baron. King Baron does have a.
Might have a point.
Yeah. This is an interesting piece to throw in there. That's stuck with me since the first time I read it, so many years ago. As if the crystal is worth our attention, as if it has action on its own and agency, and all it's doing now is biding its time.
Right.
You
could
do something later.
Well, the Infinity Stones, once they awoke they wanted to be together.
I didn't know that.
And here we are in the open world.
Okay, well, I think now is a good time for me to try this save option. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I got my buddy. Dragoon.
There's Kane.
Yeah, magic? No magic for him. And he's an iron-handed. Okay.
Whoa. And he jumps really high in the air, so whoever would play him would have to have gigantic legs.
What? Get that in CGI.
No way, man.
Alright, I'm saving. Okay. Thanks for watching this playthrough.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here and watching me play.
Excuse me. It was a pleasure. It's a ton of fun. I can't wait to do it some more and pour far too many hours into a game.
Okay. Well, from Give Me the Controller, this is Matt.
I've been Nate. You've been great. Thanks for nerding and learning with me and my brother.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. How do you feel? That felt great. It was loose.